Let us continue with our Bible study on chapter 2 from verses 19 to 37. Descriptions of Judah's sin, verses 20 to 30. These verses furnish a list of 7 similes illustrating Israel's apostasy. 1. Israel was like an animal that refused to obey the farmer. Verse 20. It had broken the yoke that was on its shoulders and wandered upon places of worship on high hill and under every green tree. 2. She is like a harlot. Verse 20. They prostituted to the pagan gods, believing that this abnormal sexual gratification would bless them with food and grain. 3. She is like a noble wine, a high-quality red grape Sorek wine, Isaiah 5:2, that became a strange wine, yielding foul-smelling, degenerate plants. Verse 21. 4. Israel's iniquity is a stain that neither nitre nor soap can remove. Verse 22. Nitre is a mineral alkali cleanser encrusted at the bottom of the lakes after the summer heat has evaporated the vapor. Soap is a vegetable alkali cleanser which is obtained from different plants. God says that no ritual cleansing could clean the stains of Israel's iniquities. 5. She is like a swift dromedary traversing her ways. Verse 23. A dromedary is an African swift-bred camel trained for riding and racing. She runs around in all directions, seeking a mate in the heat of her passion and impetuous lust. God compares the idolaters to these beasts because they never cease running to and fro, for both valleys and hills are full of their idolatry. 6. She is a wild ass that snuffeth up the wind at her pleasure. Verse 24. Through the desire of her natural instinct, the wild ass snuffeth up the wind to sniff the urine smell of any male around her in the season when her sexual impulse is strongest. She then chases to find the male and puts herself in the way of the males so that they have no difficulty in finding her. These brute creatures have only a short season in which this appetite prevails, after which they become quiet and governable as before. Israel is compared to this creature for its ignorance, stupidity, folly, and stubbornness for its idolatry. Job chapter 11 verse 12. 7. The shame of Israel is like that of a thief who has been caught. Verse 26. As a thief will not acknowledge his fault till he is taken with the deed and ready to be punished, so they will not confess their idolatry till the punishment due to the same light on them. In verse 25, God says that if the people in Judah continue to follow foreign false gods, they would become prisoners. They would have to walk into a foreign country with bare foot. They would have to suffer without water. Yet they were foolish and they loved foreign gods. The barefoot and constant thirst were marks of exile and slavery. Verse 27. Saying to a stalk, Thou art my father, and to a stone, Thou hast brought me forth. For they have turned their back unto me, and not their face. But in the time of their trouble they will say, Arise and save us. The leaders had advocated worshipping the creation rather than the Creator and had promoted the worship of Asherah poles and stone pillars. These were phallic symbols in Canaanite religion that represented the powers of creativity and fertility. Stalk represents an image of wood. It is a masculine noun in Hebrew. However, it represents the leading female Canaanite deity Asherah. Israel calls it its father. Stone represents a marble. It is a feminine noun in Hebrew. However, it is represented by Baal, the leading male Canaanite deity. Israel calls it as the one who brought her forth. A figurative parentage from an idolatrous ritual is given here. There is a strong satire here on the people's stupidity, for it is the female symbol tree that is called father and the male symbol stone that is called you who gave me birth. J.A. Thompson, in his book titled The Book of Jeremiah, says that Israel was so confused about what she was worshipping when she ascribed to the gods of fertility her very existence. Israel came to the Lord to save themselves only when the sticks and stones did not help them in their time of danger. But at this time God said, verse 28, "But where are thy gods that thou hast made thee? Let them arise if they can save thee in the time of thy trouble. For according to the number of thy cities are thy gods, O Judah." We see God's sarcasm here as he laughs to scorn the false confidence by which the Jews deceived themselves. As the people were not satisfied with the one God, every city chose a deity for itself. Since then, innumerable gods were worshipped. They worshipped many idols, but either collectively or individually, they were of no help in the time of trouble. So God further sarcastically asks, "How come these innumerable gods do not help you?" Since God did not answer the Israelites, so again, by the legal terminology of a lawsuit, Israel's case against the Lord is being pursued in verse 29. God's answer to such a ridiculous lawsuit is given in the same verse. "Ye have transgressed against me." God's judgment is already pronounced and has begun its work. It cannot be changed. Verse 30. "In vain have I smitten your children. They received no correction. Your own sword had devoured your prophets like a destroying lion." Here, your children refers to the destroyed northern kingdom Israel. Judah had not learned or received correction from what had happened to Israel. They had not listened to the Lord's prophets. Instead, Judah killed the prophets who had urged them to return to the Lord. Manasseh had killed many prophets when he was the king of Judah. Similarly was Isaiah, Zechariah, and Uriah. Many innocent blood had been shed from one end to another end of Jerusalem. 2 Kings chapter 21 verse 16. The Lord will judge sinful Judah, verses 31 to 37. God says that he has neither been a wilderness nor a land of darkness to Israel. In verse 31, Israel says, "We are Lord's, we will come no more unto thee." Israel wished to be his own master without regarding divine or human laws. It was this disposition that caused them to fall in so fully with the whole system of idolatry. Verse 32. "Can a maid forget her ornaments or a bride her attire? Yet my people have forgotten me days without number." Israel's rejection of God was unnatural. It is only natural for a young woman to treasure her ornaments and for a bride to value her clothing, which indicated the status of a married woman. Yet, God's bride Israel has forgotten her greatest treasure and attire, the Lord, days without number. They believed that they didn't need to come and humble themselves before the living God. Verse 33. "Why trimmest thou thy way to seek love? Therefore hast thou also taught the wicked ones thy ways." Ironically, like an unfaithful wife, Israel had prepared herself to seek a new lover. She had become skillful in her acts of sex that she was even able to help professional prostitutes that did not even know the Lord. Verse 34. "Also in thy skirts is found the blood of the souls of the poor innocents. I have not found it by secret search, but upon all these." Anyone who killed a thief at night was not guilty. Exodus 22:2-3. But the Lord's people had no excuse. They deserved the Lord's punishment because her crimes are obvious. In verse 35, despite the plain nature of their sin, Israel could still claim innocence. They felt entitled to divine mercy. Their claim to innocence made them more guilty. Verse 36. Why gaddest thou about so much to change thy way? Thou also shalt be ashamed of Egypt, as thou wast ashamed of Assyria. The New Living Translation has this for Gad. First here, then there, you flirt from one ally to another asking for help. Egypt and Assyria did not help Israel, yet the Lord's people in Judah trusted them. Here, God requested a reason from Judah to account for their gadding about. The Lord says that Judah will be ashamed of those foreign alliances. She shall find all her confidence in vain, her hope disappointed, and her state reduced to utter desperation. Her hand being placed on her head in verse 37 was the evidence of deep sorrow occasioned by utter desolation. Chapter 2 Questions. Chapter 2 Answers.